Public Interest Law Centre, Section 27, has launched the second edition of its Basic Education Rights Handbook. Its aim is to empower various stakeholders in the education sector. The edition will serve as a resource for understanding education law and policy. Let's talk about this with Dr. Faranaaz Veriava, Head of Education Rights Program at Section 27. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor. Thank you for your time and patience this lunchtime. How different is the second edition from the first?
Well, the basic structure and purpose of the handbook remains the same, which is to take a lot of the issues that have been experienced both inside and outside the courts, or which haven't reached the courts, and to use those as case studies to inform people of the main issues, whether it's violence in schools, corporal punishment, sexual violence, what the processes they should follow, if it's something dealing with textbooks, education provisioning, how they address that, if it's issues of discrimination, whether it's learners with disability or discrimination on the basis of religion, that people know what their rights are and how they can deal with it. What is different is that between 2017 and 2022, there has been an increase in case law in education. There have been many law developments in education, legislative developments, and there have been a lot of campaigns brought by civil society organizations. So it was very important that to remain current, because the handbook is so popular. Not only is it used in the education community, but it's also being used in university departments, whether it's in the law department or the education faculties. So it was very important that it be updated to remain current. So that's basically what we did.
I'm curious about the accessibility. You say it's popular, but how accessible a document is it for people who are outside the civil organization space and even academia?
So what we've done is that in the first round and now in the second round, we are looking at a massive public awareness campaign to make people aware of the existence of the handbook. And then the other thing that we've done is that we've put it online. And where we have it online, you can download it chapter by chapter. So there's more than 20 chapters. And obviously for people to download the entire book will, take up a lot of Wi-Fi and all of that.
Right.
So what we've done is that if you want to look for a chapter, for example, can I get an exemption from paying school fees? Then you'll just go to the school fees chapter. So we've put each one as a self-standing chapter. The other thing is that where it's families or teachers or schools, the poorest schools, we then, they contact us. We then send a handbook to them. Obviously, if it's from a university or somebody from one of the big law firms in Sandton, which does happen, we sometimes then ask for a small contribution to cover our postage costs. But that is how we are getting the message out there. I will say that it's very widely used. It's even been cited in a judgment. So. Right. It's getting around. It's getting around.
And the handbook, Dr. Veriava, exists because there was indeed a gap in terms of knowledge around the rights of people. You mentioned parents, for example, in education. Now that you've listed examples such as this handbook being cited in actual court outcomes, how do we continue to close that gap beyond the publication of the handbooks in making sure that more and more people actually know that when you are interacting with a school or university, you don't simply have to take what's put to you by the management of the institution, but you can indeed go to a resource such as the handbook and fight your case?
So one of the chapters we have in there is how to mobilize around your rights. So to give you a practical example, we give, for example, in the Religion in Schools chapter, or I think the Code of Conduct chapter, the example of the Pretoria girls incident that happened many years ago, which was about hair policy in school. So if a similar issue arises, students can say, these are our rights, engage with the school governing body, with the school management, to the extent that the issue remains unresolved, obviously the hope is that by creating awareness around rights, legal literacy, that this will resolve the issue, whether it's literacy on the part of the school management or on the part of the learners. Where that fails, we then list all the details of all the different organizations, whether it's us, our partner organizations, Equal Education Law Center, the Center for Child Law, the Legal Resources Center. These organizations can then be approached to assist people in asserting their rights.
Very briefly, Doctor, where have you seen in your experience, in your work, the greatest violations of rights in the education space? Who are the greatest perpetrators, given just how varied the violations may be?
Well, there's all different kinds of rights violations, but our biggest problem in South Africa, that we are not even getting close to almost a quarter of a century into our post-apartheid democracy, and that is addressing the backlog in infrastructure. So for the vast majority of learners in South Africa, they're still attending apartheid schools without roofs on their heads, pit toilets where children are literally dying, overcrowding in classrooms. And as I said, each area we can speak about each specific area. But until we get the infrastructure issue right, we are allowing our children to continue to exist in the kind of education system that would have existed pre-1994. And that is very sad.
Dr. Veriava, thank you so much. Good to speak to you today.